Packers at the Niners. Another 9.5 point spread. This one juiced a little bit towards San Francisco. Has been at 10, bounced back to 9.5, bounced back to 10 for a little bit. Sitting at 9.5 now over at FanDuel. Total here 50.5, juiced a little bit towards the over. I'm curious, RJ, do you see this as how does this compare to the Ravens-Texans matchup in terms of, because similar spreads, number one seeds, dominant teams all season long, and now you get the first ever 7 seed to advance in the new playoff format in the Green Bay Packers, and a former Kyle Shanahan assistant going up against his old boss, who has pretty much dominated him for much of the year, for much of his career.
Yeah, the interesting thing is this is the 7 seed, but I feel like the underdog is better than the other matchup, and I feel like the favorite is worse. So it feels like if you think you look at these two lines, you should be on the underdog here and the favorite on the other one. Or if you think one of those lines is right, then that should direct your play on the other ones. It should be a much stronger play there. 11 of 12 San Francisco wins have been by double digits. The other just missed by a meaningless last-second field goal, that Week 2 Rams game where they kicked that field goal to make it 7, which all bettors know that had 7. So why are you doing that? Or save them, But many of their wins look less impressive in retrospect. When you click through their game log, you're talking about teams like Philadelphia, Dallas, Jacksonville, Seattle twice, teams that turned out once their season ended, it was like, oh, maybe these teams weren't as good as we thought all along. And San Francisco has built a lot of their wins like that. Now, I'm not calling them a fraud by any means. I'm just not convinced they're in the Baltimore tier. That's why I say that they're worse than the Ravens here. Even though my rating still have them even with the Ravens, and I actually bumped my Packers rating up a decent amount. I was been worried about the defense. It's played better the last few weeks. Maybe that Panthers game where they were atrocious was a wake-up call, and they've got things figured out now. But that offense looks like impossible to stop at this point. 48 points in Dallas is incredible. I know some of that was defensive touchdowns, but Jordan Love playing like a top quarterback here. I think they can cover this game. Not putting it, against any odds of them winning this game and go into San Francisco and win if he continues to play well and spread the ball around. So I think if you're going to play this game on the spread, you play the Packers. In terms of our little competition, I'm making this my receiving prop, and I'm taking George Kittle over 22.5 yards for his longest reception. He's hit this in 8 of his last 10 games. He's gotten to 24 yards for his longest reception in 8 of his last 10 games. And Green Bay allows the 15th most receiving yards to tight ends, but the 5th fewest receptions. So they're able to give up these big plays to tight ends. And with Kittle averaging nearly 16 yards per reception, a career high for him, it feels like this number is very much within reach. So I think if you're going to play a Kittle prop here, and we talked about it on the Tuesday early edge show with Mike McClure, and somebody was asking about Kittle props, and he said, if you're going to play this over. I went and dug into it a little more, and I said, well, I'm going to play this over, because he was completely right on that. And so I'm throwing it in here as my receiving prop. Kittle longest reception over 22.5 yards.
Do we think we see this get back up to 10, or does it sit at 9.5 the whole time?
I don't think so. I think people are going to want to bet Green Bay after seeing what they did last week. It just feels like this number is still a little too high for people. And why is San Francisco going to be double-digit favorites? Even though they won a lot of games by double digits, like I mentioned, the resume is less impressive when you start breaking it down.
You've got a Kittle prop. Katie also has a Kittle prop. Surprise, surprise. This is my shocked face. Katie Mox has a George Kittle prop, and Prop Stars also has what?
I have 3 plays from this game. I have a different outlook.
I meant that Katie has. I meant Katie's picks with the Niners. She has the Niners team total over and George Kittle over receiving yards. I'm giving her crap. I obviously not.
The mock special. The mock special. The Niners team total. If you've been a listener of this show, you will know Katie has been successfully, I might add, riding this bet all season long. I'm not sure on the season-long record, but I know it's been extremely profitable. I want to say in the neighborhood of maybe like 12-5 over the course of the regular season so far. So over 30.5 points here, I believe, is the number that Katie has. And, been very successful back in San Francisco, facing a Green Bay defense that has not been very good for the majority of the season. So I like that as well. And Katie's also backing George Kittle over 52.5 receiving yards. Kittle tends to play really well in these high leverage, big game spots. Again, against the Green Bay pass defense that has not been particularly good. So, yeah, I have 3 plays from this game. And, again, a little bit of different of an outlook as far as Green Bay is concerned. I'm back in the 49ers here. I'm going to take them minus 9.5. I think they roll on this Packers team. As far as I'm concerned, the Packers won their Super Bowl last week. I really thought, and I mentioned this at length, if you guys recall last week, that Dallas was very fraudulent. So I wasn't terribly surprised seeing Green Bay beat them. And I just think this is a whole different animal in this San Francisco team that are not fraudulent. I think San Francisco's defense is actually a little bit underrated, believe it or not, particularly their pass defense. I really think they're going to have success against Jordan Love. I don't think any of these options, I don't think they lack a viable number one option on the outside. I'm not buying Christian Watson, who's operating at less than 100%, and the rest of Jordan Love's options. To me, I think we're going to see the combination of the pass rush and one of the top coverage units in the NFL really clamp down and make life difficult on Jordan Love. The one area that San Francisco's been vulnerable has been on the ground. But, yeah, I think Jordan Love's going to have a hard time gaining yards. I think San Francisco's going to make a real statement here against this Green Bay team that's been playing above expectations. To me, this is a regression spot. I like San Francisco to roll. I like Jordan Love to struggle. My passing prop is under 249.5 passing yards for Jordan Love. So, yeah, those are my 2 plays. I think I have a third play, and it's Brandon Ayuk over 66.5 receiving yards. I've been talking about this all season long. He's had one of the most efficient seasons in NFL history. Over 1,300 receiving yards, has had 10 targets one time. If he was in a different offense or higher volume passing offense, he would have been up there with the Tyreek Hills and CeeDee Lambs. He's played that well. Green Bay's pass defense is absolutely dismal. They rank in the bottom 5 in nearly every defensive passing metric. They don't double team opposing number 1 wide receivers. They give up a ton of areas, a ton of receptions in the splash zone as well, where Ayuk is targeted more at a higher percentage than any wide receiver. So this is a great matchup on paper for Ayuk to really take advantage of a porous Green Bay back end. So, yeah, give me Ayuk over 66.5 receiving yards, Jordan Love under 250 passing yards. I like the Niners to win by at least double digits.
The thing I would say about the Packers winning their Super Bowl and playing, what are the expectations going into this game is that it kind of feels like that was the case with Cincinnati a few years ago when they made their ascension. And that first year they won the division. They went out and won their wild card game at home. And then they went into that game, the next round. I believe they were against the number 1 seed Titans, which I know a lot of people didn't credit them for being as good as they were, but they won that game as a dog. And then they went into Kansas City, a game they had no business playing in. And that was the stopping point where this is where it's going to fall apart. And they beat Kansas City. So I'm not saying that this is the exact same team. That defense was a lot better than this defense, but I'm just pointing out that when there's a quarterback that's ascending and we might be underrating his ascension to a point where if Jordan Love is a top 5 quarterback rather than a top 15 quarterback, he can beat anybody at this point, with how good he spreads the ball around. And so we'll see. If he goes into this game and wins this game, then people are going to start talking about him like a top 10, top 8, maybe even top 5 quarterback.
Yeah. You go on the road and beat San Francisco after going on the road and beating Dallas and looking the way that he looked. And I do think that is possible. Would you we'll get to we got a pick 6 parlay that we'll get to in a minute, but I wish that there was you got the money line on I feel like the Niners win. Pete Prisco thinks the Packers can win this game, by the way.
Of course he does. He's with Aaron Rodgers moving on, he's still going to back the Packers every year. Like he does.
It's unbelievable.
So Jordan Love, if he has a chance to show he's that good. I mean, it's interesting. I bring that up because, maybe Jordan Love isn't a top 5 quarterback. Maybe that's way too aggressive on me. But what would this line be if Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback, considering how much people pumped him up going into the season?
4.5?
4.5, yeah.
Yeah. And so and he's played better than Aaron Rodgers, especially down the stretch where he's had 8 of 9 games with multiple touchdowns and no interceptions. I mean, that's about what you're getting from Aaron Rodgers, and he's that offense through a bunch of injuries.
I do believe Jordan Love is very good. I just think the supporting cast is partly going to be exposed here as well. I just don't think the skill position players that just lacking a number 1 viable wide receiver, just not really impressed with, 30-year-old Aaron Jones and the wide receiver core. I know they're young. There's a little bit of talent there, but yeah, I just think they're going to get exposed across the board. It's not just going to be Jordan Love kind of floundering. It's going to be a team effort, and the defense is terrible.
But I don't know who you take away if you're the 49ers, because, I mean, he didn't target Jaden Reed at all last week, and Christian Watson didn't do work, and he was just throwing it to whoever he wanted to. You know, Bo Melton was getting catches. Like, it was just, who is this guy? You know, how is he spreading the ball around this well, you know, to whoever he needs to, whatever the defense is going to give him. So I thought it was interesting. Really raised my expectations of Love going into next year based on what I saw down the stretch, and then especially that last game against Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, Pete's argument too for the win is that if you can block the Niners, you can beat the Niners. And while I think that like many of Pete's weird old person sayings are kind of whatever. Like, when the leaves on the ground, I'll wear the crown. It's like, go get a monocle, you old bald geezer. But I do think that, to his point, like, if you can stop the 49ers from getting that pass rush home, and you can get Aaron Jones involved in the screen game and he's running the ball well, then I don't know, maybe you can pull the upset. I'm struggling with both of these games because the spread, it's just a huge spread. And it's like, even if the Niners are rolling, you could still see, like, we always saw the thing about Aaron Rodgers would, if he would just be like, all right, I'm out. Yeah, if they were down like 25 points, or like, you know, like the game's over, you could tell the game's over, and like he would just be like, I'm out, and like didn't want to throw a bunch of picks. I feel like Jordan Love is going to just keep chunking it no matter what happens. So I don't know, man. I tend to lean towards the favorites here, but it's a ton of points.
And I just want to clarify real quick. The chat's like, you think Love's top 5? I don't think he is. Like, I wouldn't put him in my top 5, but I'm just leaving the possibility open that he is, because that's how he's played like over the last 2 months. And so, like, I wouldn't rank.
And when you say top 5, you don't mean like he's going to be top. Like, we're going to be like, Jordan Love's a top 5 quarterback going into next year. But I mean, like, if he beats San Francisco and goes to the conference championship game as a 7 seed, he's going to cement himself into the top 10 going into next year.
Yeah, if he keeps us rolling, we'll talk about him like George Burrow, like we talked about Joe Burrow after that Cincy Super Bowl, where he immediately jumped into the elite discussion at quarterback.
And this is also a former first-round pick who had like really high, like impressive moments at Utah State, had some floor moments, but did the exact same thing that Aaron Rodgers did, where he sat on the bench and learned and got to develop slowly, and has come in and played a little up and down, but then really peaked at the end of the year. So who knows? Fun game. Both these games, big spreads, but fun games just because of the quarterback narratives on the other side.